just seeing someone murdered, someone's murdered body, and knowing that to so many people they're just a drop in the ocean, that it right. That these 5 children represent
right millions. They call them a blob of tissue, but you were holding these little babies in your hands, in your gloved hands, and now y'all named all of the babies, and you did give them a funeral, and most of them you gave a proper burial.
The following video includes graphic images of aborted victims. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. If you have had abortion-related trauma or have experienced pregnancy loss, please exercise extreme discretion.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Terrell, Senior Editor with the New American Magazine, and with me today are 2 very brave ladies. Terrisa Bukovinac is the founder and executive director of Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising, and Lauren Handy is its director of activism. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
And on March 25th, y'all became somewhat famous because you uncovered the aborted remains of children at a D.C. abortion mill. Some of those bodies indicated that those babies suffered very violent murders at the hands of the abortionist there. You turned that evidence over to authorities, but since then, authorities have tried to brush it off, saying those babies were all aborted legally. And in the meantime, they've been demonizing you. Media has portrayed you, Lauren, as some type of a freak who hoards dead babies in your basement. And they've said that you stole the biomedical waste from that clinic. So why don't you give us your story here and tell us the truth about what happened. And then we're going to move on and talk about the support you're getting as well as the persecution you're enduring because of your brave act.
So March 25th, we were going to Washington D.C for a regular anti-abortion outreach, reaching out to moms in crisis pregnancies, offering them life-affirming resources. And we're pulling up to the abortion facility and we see a medical waste truck outside. And I immediately jump out and pull out my camera and start taking pictures. And Teresa's right there beside me. And we go up to the medical waste guy and we start talking with him. And do you want to?
Yeah. So then we asked him, do you know what's in these boxes? And he was like, no. And we said, dead babies. And he was totally shocked. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know how to react. And Lauren said, are these from the Washington Surgery Center? And he was like, oh, I don't think so. And went up to the front of the truck to double check. And while he did, we saw the labels on the box that said Washington Surgery Center. And so when he came back around, he confirmed, yes, they were from there. I said, would you get in trouble if we took one of these boxes? And he said, well, I've already scanned them in, but what would you do with them if you took one? And Lauren said right away,
a funeral and a burial.
So he said, he thought about it for a second and he was just like, okay. And Lauren scooped up the box and we took it back to her apartment.
Which is only the human reaction to have when you realize that there are babies there that need
yeah, exactly. And it's just like, we've had interactions with medical waste company workers before, and they were more hardened, or they ignore you or brush you off. Mm-hmm. But this person was genuinely disturbed and shocked. I truly believe he did not know what was inside those boxes. And there was almost a sense of relief on his face when I said a funeral and a burial, because I can't even imagine that type of culpability and guilt on his soul. Right. And it's just like that promise of a funeral and a burial, what is like what drove us, me especially, over the next couple days. And because it's just like, I owed it to that man, not only to the children, but I owed it to that man as well, who could have potentially lost his job, potentially, we don't even know, because of course he hasn't come forward, and Curtis Bay is going the denial route. But, I've wanted to maintain as much integrity as I could throughout this whole process. And that phrase, a funeral and a burial, has grounded me and guided me throughout this whole process.
But now when you got that box, you actually didn't know what was in it. You took it back to and you did have it in your apartment, which was a basement apartment in one of the row houses in DC, and you opened it there. And tell us what you discovered.
So when we opened the box, we cut open the red bag, and we just saw all these small little blue containers of each housing a small little child, first trimester to early second trimester. Mm-hmm. And then down underneath these little blue containers, there was a bigger bag. And they were big containers. And at that point, like, I caught my breath, I couldn't breathe. And I had this overwhelming sense of dread. And like, as big containers means bigger children.
Right.
So
and that is what you found.
And that is what we found. We found 5 children who were very advanced in their gestational age, well past second trimester, even into the early third trimester. And I would reasonably say 30, something around 28 to 30 weeks. And when we open that first container, there's video and photos that have been shared. It's just absolute dread, absolute horror. And it's just like, we were weeping and just
the worst thing we'd ever seen.
Ever.
I mean, there's like a certain amount of like preparedness we had for this. We know what we're about to open. We're strong activists. We're not afraid of being arrested. We're not afraid of being assaulted for the most part, at protests.
Right.
But just seeing someone murdered, someone's murdered body, and knowing that to so many people, they're just a drop in the ocean, that right. That these 5 children represent.
Right. They call them a blob of tissue, but you were holding these little babies in your hands, in your gloved hands. And now y'all named all of the babies, and you did give them a funeral, and most of them you gave a proper burial to.
Yes. And it's just like these victims of abortion, of violence, they were stripped of their dignity, and just like being able to name them and being able to have the 110 first trimester, early second trimester buried was a way to uplift and restore at least some of that dignity that was stolen from them, violently stolen from them. And we had a priest, Father Bill, come and say a funeral mass for all 115 children inside the apartment. And then 110 of those children were taken to be buried as well.
That's wonderful. But the other 5 you preserved to turn over to authorities. You did turn them over to DC police, and DC police came back within 24 hours and said, they were all legally aborted, and they just brushed it under the rug. Do you regret contacting DC now? Should you instead have contacted the FBI, or what? Where does that stand now?
I think that time will tell whether or not that was a good decision. It was a very difficult decision to make. It was very tense. We didn't know what to do, and there were so many people telling us to do different things. But we did decide to do it this way. And I think that, given the fact that Congress is now involved and that this has become such an international story, it's hard to imagine that would have been the case had we not turned them over to authorities. So I think, we are still fighting, especially Lauren as a Catholic. I'm non-religious, but, the burial was a part of the promise that we made to the whistleblower, to the Curtis Bay whistleblower. And so, you know, we're going to continue to pursue that. And we hope that not only will there be justice for these babies, but that we will have a chance to keep that promise.
And
well, now last week, I'm sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
I think that because Congress does oversee the jurisdiction of DC, that this might be tactfully, we are in a unique position where that Congress has leverage over the DC system and the workings behind it. And so I think maybe this is tactically more advantageous and that we didn't necessarily foresee, but as things are playing out, it probably is best that we coordinated through our lawyers, DC homicide, DC forensics.
Right. Now, you make a good point there. And what has come, because last week, 24 U.S. senators and congressmen demanded that the Washington, D.C. mayor and the chief of police conduct a thorough investigation to what they called horrific deaths of these children, and that more than one of the children indicated the conditions of the corpse indicated that they were born alive, protected under the Born Alive Infants Protection Act. And another one at least indicated that she was a victim of partial birth abortion, which is also against federal law. So what has happened now, I know that the legislators demanded a response from DC by last Wednesday. Did they receive one? What's gone on with that?
Mayor Bowser wrote a letter to Senator Langford, essentially saying that she is not going to pursue autopsies and instead is pursuing some kind of charges against Lauren and I, which, you know, as far as we can tell, we have not violated any laws, but that doesn't mean that people who sympathize with the abortion industry won't try to find a way to find criminal activity in our actions. But yeah, go ahead.
Then a second letter was sent by Congress with 69 signers to the Attorney General, and then Ted Cruz specifically did another letter, and it's just this show of unity has been really strengthening for us, because as progressives, we vastly different on economic policies with a lot of these people. But the thing is, these pictures touched something in all of us. It is written on our hearts to love and to protect, and to see the violation of these children, to see the violence upon their bodies is unifying us all. And that's what is really striking for me, to have people who are so ideologically different than us be able to stand together in this unified front to demand justice for the five. And I'm very thankful for these congressmen and congresswomen who have come forward to believe us and stand behind us.
To stand next to progressive activists and say, you know, we're going to demand justice alongside you.
I mean, people of all goodwill should recognize that this violence needs to stop. I mean, it's just. And so we're very thankful for people who have all come together in this unified way. And there's so much strength and beauty and unity through diversity.
Since then, we've been going to Mayor Bowser's office daily at noon to remind them that we want justice for the five, calling for an autopsy, calling for transparency. And we will continue to do that. And to the foreseeable future.
And went to the
medical. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, we went to the medical examiner as well. We had a diverse group coalition of pro-life leaders go to the medical examiners as well. And like, that was very beautiful also. And it's just like, we have plans to go to the medical examiner. We have plans to go to the White House and to continue to demand justice for these five.
Is there any way, I'm not sure I would trust an autopsy at this point by the DC medical examiner. Is there any way that the congressmen and senators can get those bodies back and we can get them to someone who could give us an honest appraisal?
There are people behind the scenes who have pledged to do a private third party.
Okay.
And we've seen that in other high profile cases like Jeffrey Epstein, George Floyd, or anything that brings national news. It's a natural response to say, hey, a third party needs to look. Because, I mean, we're talking about state sponsored, protected, and funded violence. And so can we really trust the government to do its job? Probably not. And so I think it is prudent to have a third party as well.
Okay, well, ladies, I want you to tell our viewers how they can follow you and keep track of this story because it is so very important to our whole country.
Yes.
Please follow us on all of our social media platforms at POW Now. That's PAAUNOW. And if you have any questions, you can email us at info@pownow.org.
Wonderful. Thank you, ladies. God bless you both. And we will be tracking this story very closely.
Thank you. That means a lot.